was best dressed in your opinion?
Jets was very good.
Clyde Palmer, very
It
great.
was very good, and the dedication to arranging an actual Parma to
Yes,
be cooked. And he had one of those like I suspect it wasn't glass, like Perspex cake
cake.
stands.
Yeah, he was showing me. Yeah,
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 and he
yeah.
and he carried that around for a ridiculously long time.
He commits.
Like it's
He
kind of like
commits.
we've got the point, Jets. Like
No, no,
we
no, no,
can
no.
see you, Clyde Palmer, but like you know, I spotted him after the Phoenix vote count, so this is already like 4 hours probably into the event,
Yeah.
and he was outside with people, and he was hanging on to this Palmer thing, and he got a beer in his other hand, like outside. Like, mate, you could have left that on the table inside, but no, committed.
He
All right, g'day everyone. Welcome to Got the 4 Points. We are your local footy show. We have been getting ourselves nice and stuck into finals about just across all of the leagues really in Victoria, except pretty much for the VAFA, who are only just getting there. Yeah, it's been an exciting start to the final season in a lot of different places. Got Pistol with me as always, mate. Tell me something that caught your eye in the footy over the last week.
Yeah, something that caught my eye. I'm going local here. I'm going real local to me, so
Yeah.
Castlemaine, but the Central Victorian Football League, so the Women's League, Castlemaine women's senior team just won their third premiership in a row.
Wow.
So had another win. I think it was about a 3-4 goal win on the weekend, and yeah, that strings together three in a row for them within that league, which only started 3 years ago. That league, so they've sort of
All
gone
three.
back to back to back, all three so far. I believe
Yep.
it. I could really be wrong. I believe it might have even been four in a row, but I believe the year before that it was a different league. It was a different
Right.
makeup.
Right.
So they're a premiership winning machine.
Yeah.
And it's just really impressive to see. Look,
Yeah.
I think I might have mentioned it in previous episodes. Yeah, Castlemaine's not getting a whole lot of success in the men's side in football in the last 20 odd years. So I think it's great for the town that, we've got a women's side that's absolutely dominating and dominating, a lot of those Bendigo teams as well that,
Yep.
isn't happening in the men's side. So that's what caught my eyes. So big congratulations there to the girls from it was the ladies from Castlemaine, three in a row, and from what I've seen so far of them in the last 3 years, there's nothing to suggest that they might not go and get four next year. So let's wait and see. What about you, Rob? What caught your eye?
Castlemaine Invincibles. I like the sound of that. What caught my eye? The Geelong League caught my eye, Pete. We're going to talk about the Bellarine League soon, but the Geelong League caught my eye. So my what caught my eye last week was a 1 point finals win, and it is again this week. Leopold got a 1 point win over St Mary's in the qualifying final, 11-10-76 to 11-9-75.
Wow,
Pretty decent scores there.
great
One
scores.
point win for Leopold over St Mary's. But I want to know what's going on down there. That was played at the West Reserve in Geelong. I actually don't know where that ground is. On the very next day, there was a 4 point finals win for South Barwon over Bell Park, but the scores were 5-9-39 to 4-11-35. I reckon that's pretty bizarre. Two games played on the same ground, 2 days apart. I don't remember the weather being particularly worse on Sunday than it was on Saturday. That's a really low scoring game after there was a pretty decent scoring game. So nice and close down there in the Geelong League, but
Mm.
yeah, bit surprised about those scores.
That is strange. And look, it is. Look, if I could have a second, what caught my eye, the but similar to that because it did
We'll
actually
allow it.
catch. Well, the second one that caught my eye was actually I know something we'll discuss in Siren Summaries. in VAFA B grade, but De La Salle and Trinity, De La Salle and Old Hailbury played on the Sunday at, I believe, Box Hill and had a
Yeah.
fairly decent high scoring game. I think it was 60 to 100 odd.
Yeah.
At Trevor Barker, Old Trinity playing Old Geelong, and it was 38 to 36. So
Oh,
same
wow.
day, slight different ovals.
Yeah.
And look, when we get into that, we can maybe talk through some of the differences there between Box Hill and Trevor Barker,
Yeah.
knowing that we've been at both before for finals. But yeah, I thought
Mm.
that definitely caught my eye, which is similar to that, which is just same day.
Yeah.
Feels like that super ad, doesn't it? Same day, different oval, wildly different scores. So yeah, it's that's a good one. I hadn't seen that for the Geelong League, so that's quite intriguing as to what the go was
Yeah.
there. Maybe it was just hotly contested around the packs.
Yeah. Maybe South Barwon and Bell Park have really strong defensive. Um, not sure. Hey, let's get into those siren summaries. So I think we're going to start with VAFA. We've started with the VAFA a few times lately, but it is the league close to our heart. And look, let's face it, we had one of the all-time most amazing finishes to the VAFA season in
Mm.
terms of what was on offer on the final day. It was certainly built up in the VAFA media as that this is going to be a cracker, and it lived up to it. So as we know, in the VAFA, there's relegation and promotion. Well, not promotion from A grade, but certainly relegation back to B grade from A grade. And so going into the final round, three of the bottom four teams were still in the hunt, well, in the race for relegation. So Old Melburnians were sitting on the bottom of the ladder going into that game. They were gone. They were already confirmed to be going back to B grade for 2025. But the teams above them, in order, were Fitzroy, St Bernard's, and the Uni Blacks, our beloved Uni Blacks, and all of those teams with a chance of being relegated on the day. And that's definitely led to probably all-time high traffic on the VAFA Live Scores website, I would have thought.
I would have thought so.
Certainly, there was plenty of people at the Uni Blacks game where we were with their thumbs repeatedly swiping to update the scores.
Guilty as
And
charged.
yeah, me too. Um, so it's going to be difficult for me to remember the order of all the permutations because there were so many permutations. I think I'm right in saying, Pete, that at different stages of the day, all three of those clubs sat in a relegation position at some point. Um, that might not be quite true of the Uni Blacks, but it was getting close.
It was
It was
getting
it was at least
close.
getting nervous. It was
It was definitely getting nervous.
getting to nervous territory. Right. So we started the day with Fitzroy sitting in the second of the two relegation spots, and the job was really ahead of them. They had to play Collegians, who were sitting in fourth, and they had to win to play in the finals, or win would certainly confirm Collegians in
Confirm
the
it.
finals. So everybody was sort of suspecting that Collegians would really come out to play. They would be really pumped up, and that Fitzroy would potentially find it a bit difficult. Having said that, Fitzroy coming off a pretty good run of form towards the
Definitely.
back half of the year, including beating both of the uni teams in the previous 2 weeks. So definitely in a good, rich vein of form, Fitzroy. And what do you know, against the fourth placed, hotly fancied Collegians, all of those people checking their live scores quickly saw Fitzroy get out to a 3 goal lead, a 4 goal lead. This is getting a little bit nerve-wracking. Suddenly, before we knew it, they were out by 40 points and looking very, very strong. So unbelievable scenes down there at Harry Trott for the Collegians. I can only imagine they were getting nervous about their finals position, and I can only imagine the Fitzroy fans who travelled down were getting very, very excited. So, meanwhile, St Bernard's got off to a reasonable start against Old Melburnians. Maybe we thought Old Melburnians didn't have a huge amount to play for. They've already relegated. On the other hand, their coach had announced his retirement, so they had that to play for, and they also had two players playing their 100th game. So still a bit for OMs to play for on that day. St Bernard's got off to a really good start, and then OM started to peg them back. And so things just kept getting more and more interesting.
Mm.
Meanwhile, shift our focus over to the Uni Main, where the Uni Blacks were playing the Uni Blues. And that derby situation always is pretty hotly contested. A little bit like a Collingwood Carlton game. Doesn't matter where the sides are on the ladder or what's on the line. You just bring a little bit extra when you're playing in the Uni Derby.
Definitely.
So Fitzroy, Uni Blacks got the jump. No, Uni Blues got the jump. Uni Blues got the jump on the Blacks early on in that game, didn't they, Pete? So it was about 3 goals, I think.
And maybe the first goal in the first, 30 seconds?
Yeah, true.
It was straight out of the middle, bang, goal, and you're sort of sitting there thinking, oh, no, that's not the start we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Blues have got 2 really big forwards who were looking like they were on top and on for a big day. So the permutations keep going. Fitzroy are winning, St Bernard's are going okay, and the Blacks are down to the Blues. And then things start to turn around. So we better get through this. It's just so exciting because the permutations kept changing and changing. Collegians worked their way back into the game down at Harry Trott. And eventually, come the last quarter, they managed to get their noses in front. By the same time, the Blacks have taken a reasonably commanding lead over the Blues at the Uni Main. It was a fairly close game, but my sense was that towards the back half of that game, the Blacks were on top, if not with a big margin. Yeah. Things were looking pretty good. So Blacks looking reasonably secure. St Bernard's nervous because if Fitzroy had managed to win, and with OM starting to catch up on Bernards were finding themselves potentially in danger of relegation. But I guess luckily for them, Collegians did manage to get over the top of Fitzroy at the very end of that game. So unfortunately, Fitzroy will be sent back to B Grade after only their first season up in A Grade.
Yep.
But wow, what an incredible effort by Fitzroy to get that close when, I suppose, halfway, even 3/4 of the way through the season, the equation looked nigh on impossible for them to even get off the bottom of the ladder, let alone survive relegation. And they came within 2 goals of doing that in the end. And down at the Snake Pit, Old Melburnians did manage to sneak in front at the very end. Absolute classic there, a 1-point win for OMs against St Bernard's. One of the rare times that St Bernard's have been beaten at home this year, and an amazing way for OMs to send off those 100-game players and retiring coach. But in the end, the equation, after all of that drama and all of those permutations, so the Blacks have survived after beating the Blues. We're very, very happy about that. And they ended up finishing on the same number of wins as the Blues, which is a pretty remarkable achievement given the differential in where the 2 clubs sat mid-season.
Yeah.
St Bernard's have survived relegation, even though they lost to OMs. They still had a pretty healthy percentage buffer over Fitzroy. So Bernard's and Fitzroy ended up on the same number of wins, but Fitzroy will return to B Grade on that percentage. Yeah. What'd you make of it, mate? It was a breathless sort. I feel breathless just reliving it.
I just remember. Very well recapped, I reckon, because that was pretty much how it felt like it played out for me. I just remember looking at quarter time. So the Blacks were down at quarter time. Bernard's
3 goals, I think.
Yeah, Bernard's looking somewhat comfortable at quarter time, and Fitzroy looking like they had a bit of a buffer. Then I reckon it was like 5 minutes into the second quarter. As I said, guilty as charged. I've done the old refresh on the scores, and Fitzroy are out by 40 points. And my initial thought was someone's pressed the up button on the goals one too many times. And like Fitzroy maybe kicked a couple goals, but they've accidentally given them 2 or 3 more. But when that score sort of stuck around for the next 5 minutes, I was like, no, I think that's just actually the score. So you're right. It started to get to the point where I think I'd figured out we had a 67-point swing for the Blacks if we were to lose and Fitzroy were to win. we had a 67-point swing that could be made up either via us losing by enough and then winning by enough. And with them up by 40 points and us down by about 20 points, I
Getting
started thinking,
tight.
geez, our buffer's gone from 67 to 7 points in the space of a quarter and a bit. So
Yeah.
um, it was pretty nerve-wracking. Look, you know, I think it was just one of the greatest finishes we've seen in VAFA because every single match really had something riding on it.
Yeah.
Even the St Kevin's Old Brighton game,
Yeah.
had some stuff riding on it in terms of trying to finish in second position and trying to keep Scotch into third, and then
Yeah.
Zav's trying to sneak a spot in the four from
Yeah.
Collegian. So and look, I think that just made for a really great finish. I'm sure from a Fitzroy perspective, they would have loved maybe Collegians to have been safe. And then I think you start wondering 40 points down midway through the second, if
Yeah.
Collegians had been already in the four confirmed,
Yeah.
whether they maybe don't quite go as hard
Yeah.
there, and Fitzroy can sneak over, but clearly. With the Zavs beating Scotch as well, that was a game Collegians needed to win. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Collegians drop out of the four. So
Yeah.
they clearly knew the situation at hand. They clearly knew that they couldn't
Yeah.
just sort of let the bundle drop and let Fitzroy beat them. And they pegged that 40-point lead back and got in front. Um,
Yeah.
and
10
it
goal
was
turnaround in the end, isn't it?
it is
Two
10
goal
goal
win
turnaround.
from a 40-point deficit. Yeah, I mean that's very
Yeah,
impressive.
it is
Very
very
impressive.
impressive. And like I think on the Blacks, it was just great to see us get another win over the Blues. So we won both derbies for the year, and it played out really similar to the first time we played them.
Yeah.
In the end, they
Yeah.
got the jump on us that first time we played them. They got the
Yeah.
jump on us this second time we played them.
Yeah.
But the boys looked really comfortable. I felt in post that first quarter on. I
Yeah.
felt like we looked like the dominant team. So,
Yeah.
so that sort of sets the season to the finals now. So, as you mentioned, OMs and Fitzroy back down to B grade, and then we start to look at the Collegian Scotch, I believe it is, elimination final,
Yeah.
and Old Brighton St Kevin's in the
Yeah.
qualifying final. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how those play out. But I suppose the other thing we look at, Rob, is we start to look at VAFA B grade,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we start to look who's going to be joining us
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
season to come. So,
Yeah.
so I casted my eye over the VAFA B grade over
Yeah.
the weekend. So they were in their first finals. So Old Hailbury playing De La Salle in the qualifying to decide which was going to be the first team confirmed back in A grade for season 2025,
And it
and then
is
and it is Old Hailbury. So
first time of asking.
yeah, first time of asking. Look, I think they've been the classy side pretty much that whole B grade season. D-La was showing some pretty good form late in the season. They were getting some pretty big wins.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I think if you've checked those B grade scores, Hailbury were always, I think, that team sort of
Mm.
pushing the envelope, trying to get straight back up into A grade. And it's certainly something that it's always easier when you do it the first time of calling,
Yeah.
isn't it? And now De La Salle really have the challenge ahead of them of,
Yeah.
can they take the loss, move into the prelim final this weekend, and get another bite at the cherry and try and get themselves back up into A grade. So Hailbury returned back to A grade, Rob, after only being back down in B grade for this
Yeah.
season. So relegated from A grade in 23, win their way back in 24, and will rejoin A grade in 25. De La Salle, I'm actually not too sure. Rob, you've got a spreadsheet that we've referenced before that keeps us up to date with all of that. But I think it may be 3-4 years since De La, maybe longer, maybe 5 years since De La have
I think
been.
I think it's 2018 or 19 is the last time they were in A grade, something like that.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
So maybe, what, 6 years, five
yeah,
seasons with the one we missed
yeah,
for COVID. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I think, as I mentioned in the second thing that caught my eye that you allowed me to have. So, yeah, that was sort of a 60 to 100. So about 40-point win there for Hailbury. But, some decent scoring across the board. That game
yeah,
being played at Box Hill. I reckon the one time the Blacks ventured to Box Hill was in a final against Bowie,
yeah.
maybe an elimination final, I think,
I think it
against
was.
against Bowie, and it poured rain from pretty much start to finish. But I thought it was a really nice oval to play at. The
Beautiful
Box
oval,
Hill the
great
Box Hill
surface.
Oval, yeah,
Yeah,
really good surface. So the other match in B grade was played at Trevor Barker. So we've of course played at Trevor Barker as well. Wildly different
yeah,
scoring
yeah,
tendencies. Um, for what again I would argue is an absolute crisp deck.
yeah,
It's or a crypt desk if you allow me. But it's a really good deck, and we've
yeah,
played on it. We've had the honor of playing on it a number of times at the
yeah,
Blacks for
yeah.
finals, and I think it's one of the best ovals going around for footy in Victoria. I think it's really really good. But I do wonder whether the breeze off the ocean, the beach there on the just near Trevor Barker, might have played some havoc. I did watch a little bit of the footage just to
Yeah.
see. I couldn't see any major wind effect.
Right. Okay.
Now look, I didn't watch the whole game
Yeah.
at this stage, but there was nothing to my eye that was like you're kicking it out to the right and the ball swings 10 meters to go
Mm.
through for a goal.
Yeah.
But that was an incredible game. It was a 2-point win to Old Trinity. So Old Trinity defeating Old Geelong. Old Geelong now eliminated. They'll go around again in B grade for another
Yeah.
year to see what they can
Yeah.
do. And Old Trinity now give themselves the chance to get back up into A grade. And they're probably similar to Dealer, I reckon, maybe around that
Very similar.
2018, 2019 period,
Yeah.
since they've been back up into A grade. So I'm interested, Rob. Like, this could be controversial from a VAFA perspective, um, but having been involved in what, two of them now, and can I
Yeah.
say two losing ones? So you
Mm.
might know where I'm going here, but is B grade preliminary final the best game that VAFA puts on for the whole year?
I think it's a very good question. I've definitely heard it said before that it is the hardest game to win
Mm,
in VAFA football.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's always an unbelievably bruising and brutal contest. Because of the promotion stakes. I mean, it's the two grand finalists that go up, right? So,
Mm,
yeah, you not only are you playing to play in a grand final, but you're playing for a spot in A grade. You're playing for a spot in the top flight, and all of the potential that that brings in terms of maybe that better recruiting potential, or maybe it's
mm,
better sponsorship opportunities. Maybe it's just the boost that your club needs. Maybe you're a big club and you think you really deserve to be there and belong there, and it's so fiercely contested. And of course you've also got a team there every time who's come off a really disappointing loss, because the team that loses that first qualifying final, they've already had a chance to book their
mm.
spot in the grand final in A grade, and yeah, they've potentially been pretty close and not tasted that success. So yeah, bruising and brutal. Is it the best game that they put on? Yeah, could well be. Could well
Yeah.
be.
I,
Yeah,
I I certainly know, and look, as I said, the two ones that I've been involved in with the Blacks, and I think everything you said there was true. They were bruising encounters. It was brutal football from start to finish. And like, despite the fact that we lost both of them, which crushed me, um,
mm,
like the atmosphere and the tension. The
Yeah.
tension, especially if it's close, which I know both
Yeah.
of the ones that I've been involved with were, like, that last 10 minutes is, panic stations isn't the right word, but it's just every kick, every mark, every handball, every
Yeah.
hardball get just
Yeah.
becomes amplified.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
across the board, the
Yeah.
decisions the umpires are making become amplified. Like it is. I found it an incredible atmosphere. And look, that's what De La Salle and Old Trinity are about to go into this weekend. They're
Yeah.
about to go into that do or die situation. One's gonna stay in B grade for another year, and one's gonna go up to A grade.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't think any club takes it lightly that
No.
they all want to be playing in A grade football.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, um, you know, as much as I know, I've no doubt winning an A grade premiership. If when I'm not going to say if when I get to experience that at the Blacks, it's going to be an incredible moment. But in saying outside of that, I think winning a B grade prelim final has got to be one of the greatest feelings. So I'm interested to see how it goes. In terms of their matches this season, they're split 1-1.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
D-La and Trinity are split 1-1 for wins this season against each other. Um, so it could go either way. I haven't seen the fixturing, but I would assume it's at Elstonwick Park.
Yeah.
It might be who can translate their game the best to Elstonwick Park
Yeah.
for that prelim final. And I just think it's such an incredible game. So
Yeah.
good luck to both teams. And
Yeah. Absolutely. It's
yeah,
going to be the hottest ticket in football in town this week. I reckon it's as you say, it's just such a compelling story about that promotion and
yeah,
yeah, it's fun. It's
it
fun,
is.
especially when you're a neutral and you don't
Yeah,
have to. What you can enjoy the tension and the passion and maybe not not eat all your fingernails on the way
yeah, that's a
through.
really good point. For those DLR fans and for those Trinity fans, I do feel all of the pain that you'll go through
Yeah,
come the weekend with that prelim final because
yeah,
as we said, been there twice and it wasn't a pleasant experience when you've actually got your club and your team involved.
yeah,
But I can respect from the outside looking in for the people that were neutrals at the two prelims I were involved in. I
mm,
can understand why they would have thought it's incredible because they were both incredible games, just not the right bloody result.
we
Uh,
better move on from that. We're going to
yeah,
start reminiscing. We're going to start reliving those final moments.
PTSD. I'm already paying my therapist enough. Let's move
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, let's not go there. Hey, Pete, we looked around some of the other leagues a little bit last week, so we thought this week we might have a look back at some of those ones that
Yeah,
we checked in with. Um, Obviously, the VAFA we've covered. The other one that I was particularly interested in was the Bellarine League. Like I've got a bit of an old family connection with Anglesey, so I was pretty excited to see them up in the grand final. They were taking on Torquay. So Anglesey and Torquay, pretty like what would they be? 20 k's apart.
yep,
Pretty close. Very similar sort of surfy towns.
yep.
Um, big rivalry, big
Mm,
rivalry on the surf coast down there. And there was a bit of a shock in the early rounds of the finals because Anglesey actually knocked off Torquay early on. Torquay was sitting, I've forgotten the number, several games clear, I believe, on top of the ladder. They were the strongest team by
definitely.
quite a bit through the home and away season. There's a lot on the line for both of these clubs. Anglesey haven't won a flag in the Bellarine League for 25 years and the Tigers, Torquay, they were looking to go back to back. Actually, I believe that's their third grand final in a row. They didn't win the
Wow.
first one, but
Yep.
they won the second one and looking for
Huge
their
effort.
back-to-back flag in 2024. So look, it didn't get off to a great start for the Roos. Anglesey didn't kick a goal in the first quarter. I think they only kicked 1 point. Um, So that was a good start from Torquay. Um, Anglesey worked their way back into the game a little bit. They were pretty close up to half time. I think it was a goal or a couple of goals behind Anglesey at half time. And then perhaps one of the all-time great Premiership quarters. That's an unbelievable effort from Torquay. They've kicked
Yeah.
10 goals, 5
Yeah,
to
huge.
1 goal, 1. I mean, 15 scoring shots to 2. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
The inside 50 counts would have been through the roof, and they
Yeah.
converted most of their chances, Torquay. I mean, full credit. That's an outstanding end to the
Incredible.
season for them. I mean, as you can imagine, 10 goals, 5 to 1 goal, 1 in the third quarter. The game was basically put to bed by three-quarter time.
Yeah.
Um, so fantastic effort from Torquay. Back-to-back flags. I believe that's the first time they've gone back-to-back since 86, 87.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
so quite a while between back-to-back flags. Um, be interesting to know whether back-to-back flags are a little bit more common in country footy, perhaps, than in the AFL.
Good
We
point.
tend to see we tend to see teams dominate, but anyway, that's quite a long time
Mm.
between back-to-back flags for Torquay. So no luck for Anglesey, unfortunately. Um, and we should also mention that Torquay won the reserves flag. So
Ah, okay. Wow.
I mean, that would
Party
have been
time
a
at
real
Torquay.
yeah, that would have been a big
Yeah,
night in the main street of Torquay.
would have
Chase
been.
Loftus was best on ground for the Tigers on that day. You can only imagine that it would have been pretty hard to pick a best player when you've had a commanding performance like that in a grand final.
Yeah, 100%. 10-5 in a quarter is, I mean, that's sheer dominance, isn't it?
Yep,
You know,
yep,
they call it the Premiership quarter for a reason, that third quarter, and Torquay showed why, because yeah, if you kick a big enough score in that third quarter, sometimes you can just put the game out of doubt and
yep,
just batten down the hatches and not let anything through in the last. So yeah, it
yep,
looks like it. And 10-5, great kicking, great
yeah,
kicking. Imagine, you can imagine what the tension would have been like if instead of 10-5, it's 2-13 or something like that, and you
yeah,
start to think, oh,
yeah,
how much are we throwing away? And 10-5 is pretty incredible. So
yeah,
that's sort of pretty good there. So I think I didn't mention it, but that old Trinity VAFA B grade, I think Trinity kicked 4-14.
oh
Um,
wow,
so I think you mentioned in a couple episodes around you don't win games kicking 5-15 after we kicked that against Fitzroy, and sometimes you do. You need your opponent to kick less, and that's not easy when you're kicking 4-14. So to see Torquay kick 10-5 in a quarter,
yeah,
um, that's pretty impressive. And so credit to Torquay and the Tigers there, and yeah, it's a shame for Anglesey still chasing that first flag for 25 years, but
be
hope
26 now.
26. But look, they're clearly at the right end, so
Yep,
they've
yep,
got to be telling themselves that if they can keep what they've got together this season and maybe add a few other pieces, that maybe they're a chance going into 2025. So
yep.
I think let's hope they can
Watch this
maybe
space.
have a good season next year. And who knows, Rob, when we get to from Paddock to Premiership for next season, maybe they might be one we follow.
They might feature. Mm,
Another league that we covered off last week, Rob, that we thought we'd just do a little recap of how finals are going. It was Ballarat League. We did mention for the Ballarat League they play a top six, so we were also interested in different final structures.
mm.
Can I say, having had a look at the results for the Ballarat League, I'm flat out confused, Rob.
Okay.
If anyone in the Ballarat League wants to explain to me how the top six works, if anyone just not even in the Ballarat League, if anyone understands the top six mantra, wants to explain to me how it works, please do so. But for the week results on the weekend, Melton defeat Darley to go straight into a grand final. Now,
Okay. This was the
Darley,
first week of the finals.
no, so this was the week just gone. So
Okay. Yep.
the week
Yep.
just gone. So Darley beat North Ballarat
That's right. Yes.
last weekend or the
Yep.
2 weekends ago.
Yep.
Then go and play Melton, who Melton beat East Point in the first week of finals, and Ballarat beat Sunbury in the first week of finals.
That's
So,
right.
with that incredible comeback. So,
Yeah.
the Ballarat Sunbury one was an elimination final. The
Yep.
Melton East Point was a qualifying final, and the Darley North Ballarat was an elimination final.
Right.
Okay, stay with me here.
I'm
So,
trying.
on the weekend just gone, Melton beat Darley in the first semi final.
Right.
Melton go straight through to the grand final. Now, me just being a general punter that doesn't understand the top six structure, I would think, well, Darley played an elimination final 2 weeks ago. Darley are now kaput. That's their season over.
Yeah.
Incorrect. Darley have now moved into a preliminary final. So they played an elimination final where they could have been gone, won it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
now in a prelim final after having lost the first semi-final to Melton. East
Okay.
Point, East Point defeat Ballarat on the weekend by a goal, and East Point will now play Darley in that preliminary final.
Okay.
So my only assumption is that if East Point had have lost that to Ballarat, they would have been eliminated, and Ballarat would have played Darley. My only assumption can be is that maybe the higher placed finisher of the 3 to 6 teams
Yeah.
plays in that qualifying final against the number one team or against the team that is 1 out of 1 and 2. And then whoever loses that one goes into a prelim and the winner goes straight through to a grand final.
Yeah.
And the, I don't know, punishment, I suppose, should you say, for the team that loses that qualifying final is they then have to go into a semi-final with an elimination attached.
Yeah.
And if they win that, then they can get the opportunity to play the team that has won that first semi,
Yeah.
to potentially, as it will be, which I could sort of see how that works. So Darley and East Point will now play each other as the two best teams outside of Melton to see
Yeah.
who gets the chance to try and take on Melton again to beat them. So I could sort of see it from that point where East Point and Darley have both lost to Melton. They're now both getting the opportunity to play against each other in the prelim
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see who plays against Melton in the grand final. But consider me
I think I'm
thoroughly
following.
confused. You think you're following? I'm good.
Well, sort of. Yeah.
I'm confused explaining it. So
You've done well.
I'll tell you, there was a lot of today that should have been done doing work for my job, instead trying to just understand the top six structure. So hopefully no one at work is listening to this, because it did confuse me. So I don't know if that's common across top sixes. I've not seen a lot of top sixes in my time in
No.
footy, in all honesty.
No.
But if it is common for top six, I apologise to all of those that play top six, and I'll get myself more educated for next season's top six structures. But yeah, so prelim final this weekend, where we have, did I say East Point going up against Darley? So Darley won the grand final last season. I think, as I mentioned in a previous episode, East Point have always been a strong team in my time knowing the Ballarat League. Both of them will have to see who can get over the top of the other one to try and take on Melton again and see if they can reverse their fortunes. Both teams have lost to them in the final series so far. You'd think Melton have got to be feeling pretty confident heading into a grand final in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. Yep. You would have thought so. Nice. Yeah. Nice summary there. Nice work explaining the machinations of the top six. East Point. Yeah, they have been pretty strong for a while. One of the strangest footy jumpers in country football, I reckon, East Point.
You reckon?
I do. Yeah, like for those who don't know it, picture a North Melbourne jumper with a kangaroo on it, except one of the stripes is red, not blue.
Correct.
It's like the North Melbourne jumper is quite well known and quite popular around local footy, the blue and white stripes, but then you just replace, I don't know, the left or the right hand stripe with red.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder
It
what the
is
history behind that is, whether like there's a merger with another club that's come in that used to wear red and white or whatever that was.
maybe
Interesting.
it's a really good point. Not sure, but they are. It's a strange. Like I suppose the emblem and the colours themselves individually aren't strange, but put together, it's quite
Yeah.
a strange combination to see.
Yeah.
Mind you, can't get any worse than the old Melburnians Bumblebee jumper. That's got a top weirdest slash ugliest jumper going around. It's not a good look, but I suppose we've mentioned a couple of things, haven't we? We've mentioned, you know, let's look at good football club names.
Yeah.
We've mentioned ovals.
Yeah.
We've mentioned canteens.
Yeah.
I think jumpers is another one that would have to look at some stage. What are
Oh
some of
yeah.
those really unique jumpers that exist out there? I'm currently repping the Uni Blacks Indigenous jumper.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome design, but also just the regular home and away jumper. What sort of interesting designs do we have out there? So
I
that
do
might be
like
a
that.
good one to have a check out at some point as well. We're just making this list longer and longer of what we need to explore. But look, I'm happy to tackle the canteen one if you want to look at the others. But I'll gladly go to every canteen across the state and trial out their food. So look out, I'm coming to a canteen near you.
Very
Um,
good. Very good.
an-
Where else have you
another
been looking?
another league, Rob, that we spoke about right away in episode one. We spoke about it more in particular around Kyneton's move to that league, but we did
Yeah.
talk about the Riddell and District Footy League. It's
Yeah.
it's grand final time this weekend
Yep.
in the
Hmm.
Riddell League. So they've got the Riddell Bombers coming up against the Wallen Magpies. I
Hmm.
tell you, the Bombers versus the Magpies. It's fated in history, isn't it? It couldn't get any better. Um, so Riddell earned their spot in the grand final a couple of weeks back, beating Wallen in a qualifying final. So these two teams have met in the final series. Riddell got over pretty comfortably against Wallen to get to the grand final. Wallen had to go the hard way, had a really good win by about 4 goals against Macedon in the prelim final.
Yeah.
So Riddle and Wallen will go head to head in that. Quite interested to see how that goes, albeit Riddle have won all encounters this season between the two teams.
Yeah.
So they've played 3 times. Riddle have won 3 times. A couple of the times have been, fairly comfortable.
Mm.
But it's the joy of grand final day, isn't it?
You never know.
It could. It only has to happen once,
Yeah.
and it only has to
Yeah.
happen in this one game coming up this
Yeah.
weekend for Wallen. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's quite exciting. Interesting, just looking at the teams and who might shape up for both teams. Quite a familiar name shaping up for Wallen.
Hmm.
Has done all season, and I would assume, barring anything being wrong with injury, which I haven't heard about, Jake Carlisle, the
Okay.
ex Saints, ex Bomber, was he ex
Hmm.
Bombers at one
Hmm.
point as well?
Hmm.
Lining up for Wallen. So he's
Yep.
been with Wallen all season. He's their 6-pointer.
Yep.
You can only imagine that Wallen are just hoping that he has one of those mercurial days
Mm.
where he can just take the game away from Riddle.
Yep.
Interesting looking at the Riddle team. No huge amount of sort of big points there. They've got a
Yeah.
couple of, I think, couple of 4-pointers, a couple of 3-pointers, but
Hmm.
really looks like it's a team that's been built on a group of core locals
Yeah.
or people that have been at the club long enough to see their point sort of standing move down to the lower
Mm.
echelons. So I think that's a really good sign. I think we
That's a great
spoke we
sign.
spoke a little bit about player points and salary
Yeah.
in a previous episode, and I think that's the model working as it should in terms of
Yeah.
people sticking around the club.
Yeah.
Their value then drops down, but it means you're actually getting some loyalty in local football, and you're not
Yeah.
getting the cash being chased. So I think that looks quite interesting. Another interesting one, Daniel Toman, I believe, for the Woodend Heskett Football Netball Club.
Hmm.
This is a challenge for any football club out there this season that can find a stat better than this in terms of
Hmm.
what I'm about to say. But Daniel Toman played 16 games this season, and he was named in the best 14 times. So
14. Wow.
14
Wow.
times. So 16 games, and you get named in the best 14 times. Um, it's my challenge to anyone listening to this episode across all of the state of Victoria or wider. If you're listening to it up in Queensland, in the Queensland footy up there, or over in WA, wherever you're listening, I want to know if we've got someone. And I'm going to put a bit of I reckon they've got to have played at least 14, 15, 16 games. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't give me the such and such played 3 games and got best on 3 times. I mean, I got on the best when I played footy sometimes. So that's not an achievement, albeit well done for getting in the best 3 times for the 3 games
I
you
mean, it's
played.
an achievement.
Um, but I want to know if someone can beat 16 games played 14 times in the best.
That's
I,
impressive.
I want to know if someone can beat that across local footy in season 2024, because I reckon that could be hard to beat, Rob.
Yeah. Yeah. I reckon you could be right. I reckon you could be right. I think there's going to be pretty decent odds on that person winning the Brownlow of the Riddle League. That'd be interesting to know. But
That would be interesting.
you say that he was in the best, named in the best, but not necessarily best on ground.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
Not necessarily best on ground
Mm,
for all 14 games that he was named in the best, but
mm,
named in the top 6 players.
mm.
Um,
Pretty good.
which 6 players, 22 on a team, that's probably not a bad percentage from week in,
Uh,
week out. I'm sure there's some maths buffs out there that could figure out what the probability of getting named in the top 6 of a 22-man team 14 weeks out of 16 is, but I'm certainly not one of them. All I know is that it's impressive.
that's very impressive. Yeah. Good work. Good
Yeah,
research there.
yeah.
Nice work.
Thank
Wonder
you.
how did Woody and Heskett go? They didn't make finals.
Look, I didn't check that out. In all honesty, I'll put my hand up
Yeah,
and say
I
I
don't
didn't
think they
look
made
at
the
that.
finals.
I
Yeah.
don't believe so.
No.
Even in a team that's struggling, I think
Yeah, it's
to
impressive.
to get best that many times just maybe shows um, how impressive he is across the board.
Yeah,
So that's the Riddle League. So yeah, Bombers v
very good.
Magpies. I suppose we'll see who can be triumphant. But
Yeah.
I know you've had your eyes as well, Rob. I know that's sort of a recap of some of the ones we've touched on, but I know you've had your eyes across some other leagues that we maybe haven't mentioned in previous episodes, and some leagues that have been going through finals. So what have you got for us?
Yeah, look, I just thought we'd touch maybe on one of the suburban leagues. We focused a lot on country footy and VAFA, but there's a
Yep.
lot of other local footy going on around the place. In Melbourne, we've got the Eastern Footy League, Northern Footy League. We might have a look at some of those in the Mornington Peninsula League, even at some
Mm,
point in the coming weeks. I thought I'd have a quick little gander at the Western Region Footy League for this weekend. Some pretty big clubs out that way. Footy is a huge part of those communities, and I think it's great to see as well. Footy's such a big part of some of those communities, like down towards Werribee and Hoppers Crossing, where some of those communities are really developing quickly, and
mm,
there's suburbs existing out there that weren't there. Well, even when we were kids,
correct.
but they're still embracing local footy, and a
Yep.
lot of these places have footy clubs, and they're some of the places actually in Victoria where there are new football clubs. We talk a
Yep.
lot about clubs disappearing,
Mm,
merging, going into recess. But there are places, and I think the Western Region Footy League's a good example. They've got quite a few divisions, and there's especially coming through the lower divisions. There's
yep.
some new clubs, and
How
that's
many
really
divisions
great.
they got there, Rob?
I think they've got three. Yeah,
Okay.
I think they've
Yep.
got three divisions.
Nice.
And I believe there is relegation and promotion. I haven't looked into exactly how that works, but
Yeah, I
I
think I
believe
think
there
there
is
is. Yeah.
some movement between the divisions. And we've talked a lot about the relegation and promotion in the VAFA. It'd be interesting to know if they have a similarly hot kind of Division Two preliminary final to
Prelims.
get up into Div One in the Western Region League.
Definitely.
Um, Yeah, so look, it's preliminary final weekend
Okay.
in Div 1 of the Western Region League. They're up to their grand finals already in some of the lower divisions.
Yep.
But up in Division 1, preliminary final weekend, we got Caroline Springs up against Hoppers Crossing. So Hoppers Crossing finished in fifth place, 4 games behind Caroline Springs and 5 games below top spot. So I like
Okay.
these stories when you see teams that are coming up through the finals that have maybe surprised a few people and made it a bit further perhaps than the form line would have suggested
Suggested. Yep.
through the home and away season. So that's pretty cool. Um, Caroline Springs lost last weekend to Werribee Districts, so that would have been a qualifying final. That put Werribee Districts up into the grand final.
Yep.
So that margin was 7 points, Werribee over Caroline Springs, who are the Lakers apparently.
Okay.
That's not a name that's very common across country footy. I mean, I know that there is
Lake
Lake
Wendouree.
Wendouree,
Mm.
yeah, the Lakers.
Yep.
Caroline Springs also the Lakers.
Okay.
So Caroline Springs have beaten Hoppers Crossing both times that they've played already this season. So going into this preliminary final, you'd have to think the Lakers are reasonably confident up against Hoppers Crossing.
Mm.
But having a look back at the form line, it's pretty hot for Hoppers Crossing. So I just had a look back at some of their recent weeks. So round 18, Pete,
Yep.
they played Point Cook and they won by 158 points. And Point Cook were finishing sort of more towards the bottom part of the ladder. So
I'd hope so.
finals bound side
Yep.
against, yeah, you would hope so. Finals bound side against a bottom side.
Yep.
Then they came up against Hoppers Crossing. They came up against Altona in the elimination final. Altona finished one spot above them on the
Okay.
ladder. 79-point win for Hoppers Crossing in the elimination final.
Wow.
For a team that finished higher. That's
That's
so they've come from
impressive.
fifth place. They knocked off fourth place by a lazy 79 points. And then yes, then they took on Yarraville Seddon in the semi-final. That's right, it was the semi-final, the second one. Yarraville Seddon finished in third spot, so they've now knocked off fourth and third, and
Okay.
that margin over Yarraville Seddon Eagles was 41 points.
Wow.
So that's a very hot form line coming in for Hoppers Crossing. Now they they have been they have lost twice to Caroline Springs, as I said earlier in the year, and those margins were pretty comfortable. But
Okay.
the other results that Hoppers Crossing had around those same time periods were not the kind of form line that we've got right now. So
Right.
yeah, you'd have to think Hoppers Crossing, the Warriors are yeah, they must be feeling pretty confident going into this week, I'd say.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. That's look, I think we've spoken about it before. Like footy's all about peaking at the right time, isn't it? You know,
Mm,
it's about getting good right when you need to get good, and
yeah.
that's a pretty impressive form line coming into a pretty big prelim final. Just of interest, the
Mm,
qualifying final that Werribee, sorry, Caroline Springs played against Werribee
mm,
to end up in that prelim final. I was just having a quick look at the results,
mm.
and that was went into extra time.
Oh, extra time.
Extra
Wow.
time. So at the end of the fourth quarter, Werribee Districts 8-7-55 play Caroline Springs 8-7-55. And they moved into two additional periods. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, to be honest, I actually don't know what the VAFA rules even are if
No.
there is a tie, but I assume it's maybe something like 5 minutes each way or 10 minutes each way. I don't know what it might be specifically in the Western Region League. Um, but
I actually should know this because I have actually seen a tied grand final in a VAFA game.
wow, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that
think
would
it
have
was
been
5 minutes.
incredible.
It was
5 minutes each way.
Uni Blacks Reserves 2014.
Oh, correct. Of course. Of
Yes,
course. Yes, that
yes,
famous 2014 reserves victory.
yes.
So yeah, so there's only one goal and 1 point scored in the two extra time periods, both to the goal and the point both to Werribee. And they
Yep.
get up 9-8, 62 to 8-7, 55, which is what Caroline Springs finished on. So Caroline Springs going, maybe that's even another advantage to Hoppers Crossing coming into this final is Caroline Springs might feel, hell, we should have been in
Mm,
that grand final already.
yeah, yeah,
Like how do you bounce back after, and then the extra run in the legs? I mean, think about this time of the year, players have played a lot of football already,
mm,
probably very tired bodies.
yeah,
I think we saw it in the weekend with the VAFA, and that's only getting to the last round of the season. But I saw a
yeah,
lot more. I saw a lot more boys cramping than what they were in that middle part because their bodies are just started to get to the point where
yeah.
it's a lot come that fourth quarter. I wonder how many of the Werribee and the Caroline Springs players were getting to that fourth
Mm,
quarter and going, oh hell, we've got 10 more minutes
yeah,
of football. And
yeah.
we talk about maybe that's we spoke about, is there anything more, is there anything better than a B grade or say Division Two prelim final to go up to the top grade? Maybe it's extra time in,
Yeah,
I would say, any final. I think
I reckon it would be.
extra time in any final, I think would be a pretty tense encounter. Um,
It'd
I
be
I
incredible.
I'd be really interested to know what the vibe is like in terms of the players. The siren goes. I can guarantee siren goes, there's one player that's celebrating because there's
Yeah,
always that one person that thinks they've like has forgotten the score and thinks they've gotten over the top and
and
goes
probably
out.
probably equally someone who's devastated because they think they've lost it. And it go both
probably
ways.
probably goes both ways. Probably, yeah, you got the person that's going off their nut, and then you got the person that's dropped to the deck, and then you got everyone else that's probably just like,
Yeah.
what is happening here? So, and the fans, I mean, I know, Rob, I don't know if it's been mentioned on the podcast, but some people might know that you're a Pies man. Like I do just remember the Collingwood St Kilda grand final,
Mm,
the siren went and the fans were just like, what do you do, what do you say? Like it was
yeah.
just it was
Yeah.
just it was a strange vibe and feeling. I wonder now, look, slightly different then, of course, because there was no extra time in the
Yeah.
AFL back then, but I'd be really interested as to what the spectators were doing in that Werribee Caroline Springs game when the siren goes,
Mm,
that sort of all just go, oh no, we're up for a big
yeah.
10 minutes here. So
Yeah. Got
so
to be
yeah,
better than coming back next week, though.
agreed. I think that would definitely be better than coming back next week. So yeah, I'm interested to see whether Hoppers Crossing can use some of that to their effect. They've been on the ground less than the Caroline Springs players, and they
Hmm.
haven't had that heartbreak of just missing out on a grand final in extra time. I'd be interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. All right, Pete. I think we're getting on towards our Paddock to Premiership segment.
Paddock to Premiership, Rob. So
Now, now I know that you've been really getting on the North Albury bandwagon. So I haven't looked at the scores, uh, but I have remembered that you said something along the lines of that you were going to go to North Albury for the grand final if they made it. So please update me.
I will. I did say last week if North Albury make it that I will be getting in the car and heading to a grand final in the Ovens and Murray League. I think I'd even said I'd buy some merch. Um, so Rob, it's still on because the
Yeah,
Hoppers have had a win.
yeah,
So
okay,
after having a 3-point win in the elimination final, the
yeah,
Hoppers went, you know what? We haven't tested the mettle of our fans enough yet. We haven't really gathered whether we can put them into an absolute blender of emotions. So this week we're going to have a 2-point win over the Wangaratta Magpies, and that's exactly what they
oh
went
wow,
and did. So 2 points over the Wangaratta Magpies. I mentioned last week Josh Minogue kicked 6. This week he
yeah,
kicked 4. So
oh wow,
Josh Minogue is having an absolute blinding final series. He's kicked 71 for the year,
hmm
um, But I did have a look at his last 3-4 weeks leading into finals. He kicked solitary goals each of those weeks. So
hmm
he's a big time player, I'm gathering, because finals have started and he's gone bang and bang, 6-4, cop that.
Yeah.
And you can probably imagine that those 4 goals in a 2-point win and 6 goals in a 3-point win, pretty important, probably pretty
Pretty
important.
important. Yeah.
So the dream is still alive, Rob. So
Yeah.
it's prelim final time. So if the Hoppers get up against the Wang Rovers, yeah, they go from playing the Wang Magpies to the Wang Rovers. If they can get up in the prelim final, then I will be on my way to the Ovens and Murray League in a week's time. But
I wonder where they play the grand final there. Are you going to have to drive all the way to Albury or maybe to Wangaratta or?
great question. Let's hope Wangaratta, slightly
Yeah.
shorter trip than having to go all
Yeah.
the way up to
Yeah.
Wodonga or Albury. But
Yeah.
if they get the win, Rob, I'll find out.
You
Um,
will. Well, I
now,
might just have to join you. Let's see how we go.
in saying that the Wang Rovers have won both previous encounters,
Yeah.
both of them by about 40 points. So
Okay.
the challenge is there for the Hoppers, but I think as we said before with Wallen, who knows in finals. So
Mm.
I'll be interested to see how they go, and we'll be following them closely. But what happened to your Wonthaggi Power boys, Rob? How did they go on the weekend?
Look, I always wondered when Port Adelaide came into the AFL whether they chose the Power nickname just to give journalists a great line for puns. So I can now say something along the lines of the power's gone out. Uh, yeah, I didn't do as well in my finals paddock to premiership selections as you did. You've already had a premier, and your hoppers are still in it. No, look, the power went down to Traralgon. Um, ironically, because there's a lot of power that's generated in Traralgon. Um,
True, can't argue that.
um, yeah, pretty low scoring game.
Yep.
6-6-42 Traralgon, 3-5-23 Wonthaggi. Um, I forget the exact scores and margins, but Wonthaggi had been kicking pretty decent scores over the
Mm,
last little while.
okay.
So I don't know whether it was particularly windy or wet out there in Gippsland, but yeah, that's a pretty low scoring game and
Potentially.
only a 19-point margin, but then the Power only kicked 23 points for the day. So that margin's probably pretty significant when you look at the scores overall. So yeah, disappointing
Yep.
for Wonthaggi. They did have a really late charge at the finals. They won. It must have been getting on for 7 of their last 8, if you
Mm,
include finals performances. So,
yep.
but it's come to an end. So,
Come to an end. Your Paddock to
come to an end.
premiership's over.
My paddock to premiership is over. Well, I mean, I did have another team in it on the weekend too, but they also lost. So that was Irimple.
Oh, of
They
course.
they
Yes,
up
they
in the
went into it.
Sunraysia League. Yeah, so the second option of mine have also bowed out, unfortunately. Uh, Pretty big margin there. Wentworth got the job done by
Mm,
44 points over Irimple. So that's that's a really big turnaround because Irimple beat Wentworth by a couple of points only
mm.
2 weeks ago in the
Yep.
qualifying final. So that's a big turnaround, and I have to
That is a
say
big
it,
turnaround.
it's back towards the type of margins and results that we saw for Wentworth against Irimple earlier in the year. So
Mm,
maybe a bit of a return to the form line as
maybe.
expected in the Sunraysia League.
Yep.
So that means it'll be the top 2 teams all year in the Sunraysia League that will play
Okay.
in the grand final, which is Imperials
Imperials.
against Wentworth.
Yep. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully that should be a cracking grand final with the top two in
yeah,
it. I mean, I think your Paddock to premiership, you definitely picked some great stories that I think it would have been the amazing to see them get up in terms of what they were delivering. I might have not necessarily cheated, but I went with a few that I had a connection with, but I also thought might go deep into the finals series. Although I must admit, the Hoppers, have probably been my number one. They could have got knocked out in the elimination final. So the Hoppers,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how the Hoppers would go, but I must admit as well, I did get a bit of feedback that we'd been saying the pimp in IO. Tigers. Tigers, is it? They
Yeah.
are.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I believe, maybe not you, but I believe I had been calling it Pimpinio.
I
Um,
certainly was.
yeah, I was too. Well, I got some direct feedback from some listeners that it's Pimp in IO. So
Okay.
it's we'll have to remember that if we ever talk about the
Yep.
Pimpinio Tigers. I'm telling you, Pimpinio rolls off the tongue. I might just keep saying it that way, but no. We'll respect the Tigers there. So
Is that where old MacDonald had a farm in Pimpinio?
oh boy, are we still recording? Is this thing still on? Um, that's that is that's top shelf from you.
We'll just have to find out if old MacDonald wants to get in touch and let us know.
Yeah, get in touch, old McDonald. One final Paddock to Premiership from me.
Yep.
So following the Bungaree Demons in the Central Highlands, so I've got a
Mm-hmm.
mate there that's been playing for Bungaree. Prelim final weekend just gone. They were playing against Gordon and had a 32-point win. So
Nice.
pretty handy win. Third quarter was the difference, kicking 7-2 to 2-3. So again,
Yep.
not quite the Torquay level, but Premiership quarter, they really flexed their muscles and got over the top. The Daylesford Bulldogs await them now in the grand final
Yep.
on
Okay.
Mars Stadium. So what
Oh, wow.
an absolute treat. You get to play your grand final on Mars Stadium.
On an AFL standard ground.
I attended Mars Stadium for a Bulldogs game earlier this year, round 3 against Gold Coast.
Yep.
Really lovely boutique stadium. Really,
Yeah.
really lovely. Certainly agree with playing at Ballarat earlier in the year as opposed to the like last round match they do where it's absolutely dreadful. But it was a really, really nice experience. Really nice boutique stadium. So that should be
Yeah.
awesome for the Central Highlands League to play their finals there.
Yeah.
Now, this is the league where there's that many teams involved that they only play each other once,
Right.
leading into the finals. And the one time that Daylesford played against Bungaree, it was a 2-goal win to Bungaree.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I'm tossing up potentially making the trip to Ballarat for it. With no VAFA footy for us now on the weekend, so potentially tossing up going to Mars Stadium to watch how the Bungaree Demons go against the Daylesford Bulldogs, who
Yeah.
a club
That
that
sounds
you
good.
and I both had the opportunity to play against in junior football, the Daylesford Bulldogs. We certainly came up against the Daylesford Bulldogs a couple of times. I feel a heartbreaking stories coming up, is it?
I actually wasn't going to go with the heartbreaking story. I was going to jump in and say that when we played them in the juniors, it wasn't the Daylesford Bulldogs, it's the Daylesford Demons, of
What?
the junior club. Yeah, they wore Melbourne jumpers.
Ah, well, it shows how much I paid attention to
Yeah,
the Daylesford Demons
yeah, no, it was very bizarre. The
we were
junior
normally
football team.
beating them. Didn't pay them any attention.
Oh, well, we never beat them that I remember. Um,
I don't think
yeah,
we did either, to be honest.
yeah, yeah. We lost a grand final to them. I do remember that because we had 19 on the field. Um, That's enough for that story. Yeah, no, but they wore Melbourne jumpers when we played them in the juniors in the Castlemaine Junior League, and
Mhm.
and the seniors wore Bulldog jumpers. So
Well, disregard what I said then. We didn't play the Daylesford Bulldogs. We played the Daylesford Demons. Don't know what turns them
always
from.
remember Chris Grant played for the Daylesford Bulldogs. That's always
He did.
that's my biggest memory of the Daylesford Bulldogs of the kids seeing Chris
Yep.
Grant's picture on the wall in the
Yep.
change rooms.
Yep. I don't know
Yeah.
what turns them into demons from Bulldogs as they get older, but there you go. Daylesford Demons to the Daylesford Bulldogs. So So
And well, I don't think that junior team exists anymore because the Castlemaine Junior Football League doesn't exist anymore. So I imagine that the juniors now probably play in some
under
Central
the
Highlands junior competition, and they probably
the
all just wear
Bulldogs.
the same jumper. Yeah.
Probably, you're probably right. We might have to talk about the glory days of the old Castlemaine Junior Footy Leagues one of these days. Being
There wasn't too much glory that I remember, but you're welcome to
uh,
talk about the glory.
well, no, there wasn't a whole lot of glory from the team I played with either. I don't think we made finals in the 3 years I was
Yeah,
involved. I think
yeah.
we threw away finals one year when we failed to beat a Campbell's Creek team that was like bottom of the ladder. But
Mm,
that's one of my great memories. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, but I think that's probably us done for another
I
episode.
reckon it probably is. Yeah, yeah. That's been another great edition of Got the 4 Points. I don't know if it's been a great edition. I'm just saying that. Let
But
us know what you thought.
we can be
Send us some comments. We've
we can
got
be
a
biased.
we yeah, sure, we'll talk ourselves up. Look, we've got an Instagram page, Got the 4 Points. We've got a Got the 4 Points at Gmail email address. So hit us up if you've got any good local footy stories or you've got any responses to what we've been chatting about, or if you want to pick us up on our pronunciation of local town names, please do.
Yeah,
Plenty to learn. You've got entrants for best canteens, best footy jumpers, best town names,
yeah,
or maybe you know somebody who's been in the best more than 14 out of 16 times that they've played this season. We'd love to know
yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. Hey, Pete, that's been another edition of Got the 4 Points. We hope your team gets the 4 points on the weekend, even though I suppose we're kind of past 4 points in finals, aren't we? It's all about getting the win and
It
winning the
is. It's
Premiership.
about getting the win, which I think is the same thing, isn't it? Got the 4 points. It's about just
Exactly.
doing what you need to do to get the win, and that's what finals is all about. Doesn't have to be
Yeah.
pretty. Just get to the
Yeah.
final siren, get the win, move on to next week, or if it is the last game of the year and you've won the grand final, crack open the beers.
Absolutely. So if your team's still in it, we hope they go well. And if your team's not in it, well, we hope you enjoy watching some local footy anyway. All right. We'll see you next time.
There you are.